To our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Comoon. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the Samuel Bolden Park located in Springfield, Massachusetts. So, Robert, tell us about this park.
This park is found on Wilbraham Avenue near King Street, and of course, it's named after someone from Springfield. It's part of the Legacy Trail, and I'm going to explain that, and also explain who he is, Samuel Bolden, and also I'm going to explain the rest of the parks in this Legacy Trail park, and then what should probably happen to this park. But most of this park is a neighborhood park. It's trying to get children into the park and adults. It's fairly large compared to most of the parks around Springfield. And there is a typical double play set, one for very small children and one for large children. And it has one ball field. And that's very appropriate because he was a Springfield resident that advocated for youngsters to play with a high level of sportsmanship in youth sports, which of course is good for adults too. And of course, you should not play sports unless you play with a high level of sportsmanship. So hopefully we'll learn a lot today. And of course, it has its own page with pictures, videos, but it's always best just to go visit that location.
And describe to us the Legacy Trail.
All right, the Legacy Trail is a system of parks around Springfield, all tied together by a trail called the Legacy Trail. There are 6 parks. If you walk from one to the next, all the way to the 6th one, and back to the first, it's 2.3 miles long. Each of these 6 parks have a placard outside of them, one half of which explains the history of the person the park is named after. So the park that we're in right now, the Samuel Bolden Park, they have a good explanation about it. And then on the right side of that placard, it has a map of all 6 parks and mapped out with green, and then it tells you about each one of the parks. All right, so say that you start at the Samuel Bolden, right, and you want to go around somehow to the other parks. Okay, so I'm going to bring you around counterclockwise today. The closest park to this one, very close in fact, is down at Blake Park, and that's found on Pendleton Avenue. And keep going counterclockwise, you come up to the Burroughs Park, which is on 149 Walnut Street. And then those 3 parks are rather close together, but the next 3, you're going to have to take a good long, maybe 3/4 of a long walk along Walnut Street, the Garish Park. And Garish Park is on Walnut and Ashley. And that's certainly one park that's very different from the others. It's alongside of a edge of a woods. And then keep going counterclockwise. You come up to the Ruth Elizabeth Park, named after one member of the Bill family. The Bill family started out many of the parks in Springfield. In fact, 6 of them are named after the Bill family. And this park is on Walnut, Hickory, and Hancock Street. And then you go out to the Harriet Tubman Park, the smallest park of all along the way. And that's the last of the 6. Now the walk back to the Samuel Bolden Park is again very long. In fact, it's the longest segment of all. It's a little over 3/4 of a mile long. All right. So you have all the parks together in a 2.3 mile loop here. You can do it any way you want. You can do part of it, and so forth.
And really quick, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, for more information or to sign up for any of his various tours, you check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops on each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, @yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, who is Samuel Bolden?
All right, he's a Springfield resident. He lived from 1935 to 2019, and upon his death, they named this park for him. He was, by occupation, a machinist that worked at the Moore Drop Forging Company. He also became a president of the local union, and he was very much into sports for himself, but mostly for being a coach and being a spectator at these sports. His nickname was Sam, and he was also a part-time owner of a waterfront club. As a business owner and as a community activist, he was very involved in these youth sports, trying to make sure that all athletes used a high level of sportsmanship. And he had quite a high level of community spirit. He had a lot of events that he ran every year for the community, and for that reason, they named this park very wisely after him. And his family was very honored to have him.
And what will happen to the park in the future?
Okay, hopefully the park will become a little more filled up with items that are used to remember. He had a very useful life himself, doing a lot of events. So hopefully they have a lot of events here to replicate what he wanted them to have. And that would hopefully include maybe the park can get bigger. Maybe you could have adult style physical education stations, because he advocated both for youth and for adults. And maybe some of those events could be events free of sports, but it should include the spirit of the neighborhood and all of Springfield. And these are things that he advocated very strongly. And in general, maybe fill up the park a little bit more. I'm glad that as part of the Legacy Trail, I've walked about half of that by this time, and I really appreciate that they have such a healthy activity through the core of Springfield. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of other podcasts on his website, as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new videos and podcasts posted daily. Thank you for tuning in.